More and more polls keep coming out, both at the federal and the state level, and every single one of them that is coming out right now has some really horrible news for Republicans. Federally elected Republicans, meaning House, Senate, and of course the White House, they're in trouble. They're in trouble all over the country. Incumbent Republicans like Joni Ernst in Iowa is now losing to her opponent by 3 points. And sure, it's within the margin of error, but it's also not something anyone thought would happen. But what's happening across the United States today with these massive protests is that Americans are waking up. You know, a lot of us have already been there. We understand. We've seen the injustices, the racial injustices in this country. We've been reporting on them for over a decade. Most people were completely unaware of this, right? They could tune it out. You know, okay, the cops killed a black person here. The cops killed a black person there, but it's just every now and then. It's really not that big of a deal. Well, guess what, folks? It is. And it's happening a lot more frequently than what you see. But when the protests started and the police doubled down on their disgusting behavior, that was the point when I think a lot of people across the country woke up. And since then, believe it or not, polls have not only shown that, one, people support the protests, because I know the Republicans did a good job of trying to paint everybody as violent looters. Well, guess what? That talking point didn't stick. The talking point of, oh, they're all Antifa, that didn't stick. Oh, they're trying to create their own militarized zone here without weapons. Not sticking. Public's not buying into any of it. They still support the protesters. And now the polls are showing state by state that it is costing Republicans support. And that support is, according to these polls, shifting towards the Democrats. They do not, the voters, trust the Republicans to handle the situation. Whether it's resolving what's currently happening or fixing the systemic problems that, if not addressed, will just lead to all of this happening over and over and over again. Voters overwhelmingly at this point are saying the Republicans can't handle it. The Republicans don't want to handle it. The Democrats would do a better job. Now, obviously, to be fair, the Democrats have been in charge in times like these. We had Ferguson happen with Barack Obama. And he was able to say some comforting words. We had very mild reforms put in place by this administration. It was very, very, very tiny baby steps, but it was something. But it wasn't enough by any stretch of the imagination. Like, barely noticeable, really. But the Republicans will do absolutely nothing. If anything, they'll enact policies that make things worse. And unfortunately, we are once again stuck between those two choices. Is it make things worse or make things better, but we do so little that it's barely noticeable? Well, you have your personal opinion about that. I have mine. But a majority of people out there in this country are saying, they're looking at what's happening and they're saying, you know what? I would rather have that little bitty baby step from a Democrat than nothing from a Republican. So this is bad news for the Republican Party. It's bad news for Republicans in the Senate. It's bad news for Republicans in the House, and it's bad news for the Republicans sitting in the White House, because these polls also show that when you break it down to the Senate races, if voting were to be held today, Republicans lose the Senate. That is massive. That is possibly the biggest prize available in November, even bigger than the White House. Control of that Senate is going to determine whether or not the White House, whoever's running it, can do anything. So Trump with a second term, but Democrats in the Senate, he's a lame duck, right? Well, you would think so, but we've got so many corporate Democrats, they'll give him the things he needs. But a Democrat in the White House and a Democrat in the Senate and a Democrat-controlled House? Well, if that's the case, we may actually see a little bit of reform taking place in this country. I have no hope that it'll be everything we need it to be, But at this point, you'd be lying to yourself if you said that it wouldn't be somewhat better than what's happening in this country right now.